What is going on, guys? Welcome to The Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today we're going to look at 5 books that I DNF'd for 5 different reasons. So for those of you who are new to the channel, the way I do my reviews, I go over the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good meaning the things in the book that I enjoyed. The bad meaning things that didn't work so much for me. These are preferential things like characters that I didn't like, a setting, maybe the prose, those types of things. And then I go over the ugly, which is what could be some sin that is steeped into the work that might hold a Christian back from reading it. And I break the ugly down into 5 separate categories: violence and brutality, sexually explicit conduct, language, gratuitous inclusions, and dark themes. So today I'm going to go over one book per category that I personally DNF'd. Now, just as a disclaimer, this is my preference. These are based on my own personal convictions. I'm not telling you that if you enjoyed these books, there's something wrong with that. All I'm here to share with you is my reading experience. So here are the 5 books that I DNF'd for 5 different reasons. So let's not lollygag around. Let's jump straight into it. So let's start with the first category, which is violence and brutality. What is a book that I DNF'd for violence and brutality? Well, it's actually Vinland Saga. Now, I don't read too much manga. I just don't get into it as much. Every once in a while, I'll get into a kick. Normally, once a year, I'll pick one up that sounds really exciting and there's a lot of hype around, and I'll read through it. And then I may not pick up another one for another 12 months or so. So I picked this one up, I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago, and I flew through these volumes. I really enjoyed it, but there just got to a point, I think I got to around volume 5, where I kept having this sort of nagging question in my conscience, which is, should I really be entertained by this? I seem to be dwelling on this quite a bit. I tend to have this story running through my mind periodically throughout the day. And for me, I tend to err on the side of caution. And so I think that was my conscience telling me that maybe I shouldn't be entertained by these things. And really more than that, I usually use my son as a litmus test. And what I mean is, if my son goes over to my bookshelf and picks up any one of these books and opens it up and turns to a page, am I going to be ashamed of what he finds? Now, what I mean by that isn't, is he going to be ready for it? Because I wouldn't want him to pick up the Diary of Anne Frank right now because he's too young for that. But there's a big difference between him picking up something like that or something that's grimdark and is really explicit. And so for me, with Vinland Saga, I put it to that test, and I just kind of came to the conclusion that this maybe is not the series for me. Maybe it's got too much violence and brutality going on for me personally to be entertained by. So I DNF'd this one. So category number 2 is going to be sexually explicit content. So what is a book or series that I DNF'd due to sexually explicit content? This is going to be The Remaining series by DJ Mole. I think it's how you say his name. It could be Moles. I'm not sure. But this is a zombie series. It's a pretty popular zombie series. I read the first book, which is just titled The Remaining. I really enjoyed it. This is zombies from the perspective of a special forces officer that is trained to help build back society after a catastrophic event. And I really enjoyed book 1. Book 2 I was getting into. I'd waited about 12 months before I jumped back into it. I was enjoying it. I was enjoying my time with it. But there just came a couple of scenes where there was some sexual assault going on. And for me, I just had to tap out. That's not something that I want to be entertained by. And it's definitely not something that I want to read that is very descriptive. So for me, that was just too much. And I think, maybe this isn't the series for me. There's other things that I want to read. So rather than read the rest of this or be really uncomfortable while I'm reading it, which I'm sure was the intent of the author, it's just not my preference. So like I said, The Remaining series, I think it just may not be a series for me. So I had to put it down. Category 3 is going to be language, which includes not just profanity, but also blasphemy. So what is a book or series that I put down due to an intense amount of language? Sadly, this is going to be Dungeon Crawler Carl. I started listening to this book on audio. I didn't have any audiobook series going at the time, so I'd heard a lot of good things about the series. I heard that it was funny, so I picked it up. And man, the language was just a little heavy for me. maybe more than a little heavy. It's pretty heavy. There's gratuitous use of language here, gratuitous use or misuse of the Lord's name. It's rare that I pick a book up that I have to put it down due to language, but this one just it was just too much. There's too many of the heavy hitters, if you know what I'm saying. The two words in particular that were used gratuitously were the ones that would make a film go from a PG-13 rating to a rated R rating. And so these were just used far too freely for me, and it didn't add anything to the story. It was just gratuitous in nature. So I decided, you know what, this book and this series is not for me. So I put it down. Category 4 is going to be gratuitous inclusion. Now, this is exactly what it sounds like. This is inclusion and diversity for the sake of inclusion and diversity, not because it adds anything to the story, not because it drives the plot forward, not because it helps us relate to characters. These are the types of things that are put in there because the author is either virtue signaling to a crowd, or a publisher is insisting that the author include this, or what, for numerous reasons. But these are the gratuitous inclusions that make you roll your eyes. You know, would be like race swapping characters for no reason at all other than to just race swap characters, or gratuitous same-sex relationships, or, you know, the overblown or overbloated girl power, men are bad, men are stupid type of storyline. And so what book or series did I put down due to gratuitous inclusion? And unfortunately, one of my biggest disappointments of this year so far is Grave Empire by Richard Swan. I picked this up day one. I loved his previous trilogy. It's actually right here. I loved this series. So I picked up this book. I was really hoping to dive back into this world with a bit of a time jump, and it seemed to lean a little more into the monstrous side of things that were in the first series. So I was really looking forward to this. And there's just a same-sex couple thrown in there for no reason at all. It's a complete token gay character. There were a couple of men that were looking for a room to stay in. They were talking to this character, and he said, "Here's my key. You can stay at my house. Don't mind my husband that's there. He'll just be in and out. Don't mind him at all." And he added nothing to the story. It was just in there just for the sake of somebody checking a box, in my opinion. And so I just have grown averse to these gratuitous inclusions. So for me, DNF'd it, instant DNF, unfortunately. But again, there's other things that are on my TBR that I'm looking forward to read that will not be as big of a disappointment. So Grave Empire, big disappointment for me, but you know, to each their own. So this leads me into the fifth and final category, which is dark themes. Now, this one is a little bit more subjective. What is a book or series that contains some dark themes, at least in this case, that were extreme enough or pricked my conscience enough that made me put it down? And this book is going to be This Present Darkness by Frank Peretti. Now, Frank Peretti is a Christian author, and this book was written about spiritual warfare, and you get the perspective of a couple of angels that are trying to defend at least one individual. Forgive me, it's been a few years since I read it, but I picked this book up from the recommendation of a friend. I started reading through it. Guys, let me just be very transparent with you. I do not like allowing spiritual things into the home that are spiritually dark. So the talk of demons or evil spirits or possessions, those types of things, I do not allow in my home. I do not think that for me and my family, we ought to be entertained by those things. And it also opens doors to true demonic or dark things that sometimes people dabble into, that maybe they're opening a door that they can't close. Maybe they're inviting something into their home. And what I mean by that is, have you ever experienced watching The Exorcist, or watching a movie about demonic possession, or a movie that dealt with spirits? For instance, there's been a couple like The Exorcist, and there was a couple sequels to those that were very disturbing. One of them is called Fallen, that stars Denzel Washington. Those movies, after I watched those, man, I had the heebie-jeebies for weeks. I just constantly felt, you know, I had goosebumps, or I felt the hair prickling up on the back of my neck. And frankly, these things are real. Now, I'm not saying the work of fiction is real, but demons and evil spirits are very real. And I personally do not feel comfortable with dealing with those things liberally, or with taking those things lightly. I am very serious about those things. And so for me in my home, I believe that if we tend to lean too far into some of these dark themes, that we may be opening a door that we might not be able to close. So this book in particular, it dabbled a lot in demonic spiritual warfare and how these demons could take control of an individual or throw him around or abuse him or maul him and ruin his psyche. I mean, there were just numerous things in there that were hard for me to read as a person of the Christian faith. It was very wicked, in my opinion. Now, it was the intent of Frank Peretti to do so, obviously, but I can't be entertained by those things. I don't want to read something going away feeling nasty or having that eerie feeling or having that feeling of hopelessness, or especially dwelling on demons and evil spirits. I think that is very dangerous for a Christian. At least it is for me and my family. So we abstain. So that is why I had to put the book down. So guys, those are 5 books that I DNF'd for 5 different reasons. Let me know if you read any of these, if you enjoyed them or not. Let me know what your list looks like. Let me know. Again, those categories are violence and brutality, sexually explicit content, language, gratuitous inclusion, and dark themes. Guys, make your own list. Let me know if there were some things that you DNF'd for those same reasons down in the comment section below, because just like I love recommendations from you guys, I also love that you guys comment and let me know and warn me ahead of time, hey, maybe this book or series is not for you, especially after knowing how you DNF things. Maybe these books are not for you. So I would love for you to recommend against me reading certain books as well, because I tend to err on the side of caution. So I would much rather not read something that I might have enjoyed rather than have read something that I feel guilt or shame or embarrassment for having read. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much for all of you who like, comment, and share these videos. Please share these videos to your Christian brothers and sisters. I would love to be a good resource for other Christians who love to read. So do me a favor, please share this video to your friends. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.